From the Sumaira Foundation and Connor B. Judge Foundation, this is Demystifying NMO, with support from Genentech. Welcome back to Demystifying NMO. Once again, I'm Chelsey Judge, Scientific Advisor with the Connor B. Judge Foundation. Today on the pod, we are going to be joined by the Sumaira Foundation for NMO ambassadors, Alexis Marta of New Jersey, Kristen Hewitt of Texas, and Julie Aldridge of West Virginia. So honored and delighted to have these three amazing women on the pod. Alexis is currently a senior in college, planning for her post-grad studies. Julie is a mother and an NMO warrior and an all-around amazing advocate. And Kristen is also balancing career with motherhood and also being a patient ambassador. So we're really excited to have these women on, and we're going to talk about interpersonal relationships with NMO. So that means what's it like balancing friendships, close partnerships, marriage, co-workers, close friends and family. All of that, as you can see, probably a lot of nuance and unique roles of NMO in all of these relationships.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excited for this opportunity.
I do not have NMO. I'm very privileged, health-wise, personally. My brother who lives with NMO, my husband with MS, and I do see how MS and NMO respectively impact their lives and their relationships. One of the things that my husband Austin says a lot is just, you really know who your true family and friends are. And I obviously, you're born with your family, but your chosen family, so to speak, which could be the people you're born with that you keep, and also the people that you add on, and how Austin really gives weight to his support system, his close friends and family who have helped get him through with MS. And I just think that support system is powerful, but you only get there after kind of really learning the true friendships, and that comes from sometimes weeding out the not true friendships. How do you guys feel about that?
I agree with that. I think that there's definitely been, there's friends that step up and are there to help. I also think that there's a lot of connections made through the community itself, just kind of meeting other people that have either similar disorders, or they also have NMO, and you kind of connect with them through the chats and the support groups and things like that. So you're building relationships with people that understand what you're going through. My family and my friends are great, but they don't understand things the same way that maybe the NMO community does. Mm-hmm. So it plays a role in kind of how you build those relationships with people once you've been diagnosed as well.
One of my best friends is a nurse, and she has been there every step of the way with me. And she seems to actually get it. And she's actually even the one there that she's a pediatric oncology nurse. So she sees some bad stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And she's actually been there at times and just said, okay, get out of it. That's enough. Move on. You've had your moment, and things like that actually help, I think. For me, they do.
Mm-hmm. For me personally, it's about having time and giving space. Feel your feelings, but then have people kind of help to ground you so that you don't get stuck in them. It's really hard. When my experience, just with Connor being, I think so many people I don't think fully understand that the chronic nature of it, right? And your friend who's a nurse and has actually treated a lot of patients, I think a lot of people can't grasp that this is an indefinite thing, rather than you just want an answer of oh, how are they doing? Oh, they're okay, they're fine, it's all gone now. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of that people don't fully grasp.
Oh, I completely understand that. Yeah, I have friends who don't understand that if they call me, maybe an hour before they want to be somewhere, and if I'm in the middle of not necessarily a flare, but there are times where you just don't feel well. Mm-hmm. I can't just jump up and go. It's not something that I can do. I wish it was. And yes, I used to be able to, but I can't do that now. They do not understand that, that it's just too much for me. And then it's almost like they give me a hard time.
Yeah, because I think so. Because it's the peer pressuring you to come join us is a well-intentioned place. They love you, they want to be around you, they want to do things with you. But they don't realize that there's literally a pathological fatigue aspect of NMO chronic illness And then there's like the indirect, right, of just like, it's tiring. You have a lot of things on your plate in addition to your other roles in life.
Exhausting. And I can't run and jump and meet them and come home and take care of my children. And they have my priority. So you have to save you have in the tank for what you have at home too.
I don't know if you guys like spoon theory, right? Like, is a good tool to explain to people that me, as an otherwise healthy person, like I have an indefinite amount of spoons, but like my husband, Connor, right, because of their MS and NMO, they have a finite number of spoons, and they need to be cautious or conscious of how they're using them. And it's not on others to just like be born with that knowledge. You know, it is about like education and understanding, but it can definitely, I think, impact friendships and close family relationships.
It's such a rare disease. I mean, my doctor, when I was diagnosed, he has 2 patients with it. I'm one of 2. So, I mean, people just don't understand, and you can't expect them to either. And it's so rare that it's hard to explain even. I mean, there's so many different dimensions to it that it's just hard to even explain to them.
I was just going to say, I think like the invisible aspect of it is also really, really difficult. I know myself, I have been really fortunate that I don't have necessarily any visible, long-lasting impacts from NMO. So when people see me, they think like, oh, like she's fine, like an average college girl. I know that there's been instances at school where someone came in with the flu to a rehearsal. I'm heavily involved in theater. And I said, do you mind, like, please wearing a mask? Like, I'm wearing a mask, you're wearing a mask. And this was, like, before masks were, like, you know, a cool thing to do, you know? And I said, like, can you wear a mask? I'm going to wear a mask. Like, it would just, like, for me, if I get the flu, it's not just getting the flu, it's risk of relapse. It's, like, possibly in the hospital. And they were like, yes, of course, no problem. I turn around, they took off their mask. And it was like, I thought you were a friend. I thought that, like, you cared about me, but, like, clearly you think that I'm just, like, making this up. It's just, it can be really hard to explain to people because they think that you're fine, but you're really not.
No, I think that's a really good point. My husband and I were just talking about this. It's like, he's legally blind, but from his MS, but you would never know, like, right? Like, he can make eye contact, like, you know, you would never know. He looks like he's an otherwise very healthy man. He's like in some aspects grateful, right, that it's invisible because he doesn't want to be fully defined by his MS or his blindness. But then people won't give him grace for it, right? Like, they don't know. And so they don't know to be accommodating or extra considerate. And then that sucks, right? So it's this weird thing of like, you want to be seen. I think it's just that people want to be respected, right? And we don't want to bite anybody just because they don't know, because why would they know? But like, once they're educated and they are aware, it's, can you just please be considerate and understand?
Yeah, I've always described it to like my friends and family as that, like that in between of feeling like I'm too well to be sick and I'm too sick to be well. And it's that constant balance of like trying to like have people understand that and know that you're just like, you yourself are aware that you're in this gray area. And you're asking for like the space and grace to like understand that.
And then these are, like, we're talking about family and friends, which, you know, they're probably going to be the people who are most willing to really try to understand. But that can obviously be very turbulent. But those are the people who stick around, who love you, who will figure it out with you, even though it's messy. But what about, like, in other aspects of dating?
So I was 18 when I was diagnosed, which is, like, peak of hookup culture. I was diagnosed like my freshman year of college, my first semester, right when like everyone is like, you know, experimenting and like going full force, like I want, you know, your strings attached. And when I got sick, it was kind of like this whole like, oh my gosh, hookup culture is so different now. Because I was paralyzed waist down. And no one, like, I mean, no one really talks to you about, like, how to have that conversation of, like, oh, am I going to be able to have sex? Like, no one talks to you about that. You have to figure that out for yourself. So it was just very weird for me because it turned my young, youthful, like, oh, I'm just going to have fun to, oh, now every guy or person that I talk to, it has to be, oh, well, I have this disease. It's going to affect this in this way. Oh, by the way, I have to get chemo infusions, so it's going to make me very susceptible to these types of infections. And it's just like this weighted conversation So for me, when I got back to school, it changed the game, because as soon as you brought that up, you knew who actually wanted to spend time with you versus who was like looking for like something like quick.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really lucky that I had a friend and we had met up, and I just had this moment where I just like unleashed everything. I was like, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I just want to have like a normal dating life. And now we've been dating now for years.
You can have these like very intense upfront conversations, and it's very, very difficult and awkward, but I like how you told your experience, Lexi, but like you find that people who, like the Dr. Seuss quote, the people who mind don't matter and the people who matter don't mind, that kind of thing.
So I met my boyfriend, I lost my vision in 2014, but I wasn't diagnosed until 2017. So he met me, I was in between jobs, I couldn't see, I really wasn't driving much, so I'd actually quit my job. And he claims I almost ran him over in my grandmother's drive-in. The lack of vision, because it was slowly starting to come back at that point, and he'll also make jokes that like I decided to stick with him because I couldn't see him. And so kind of, you know, he was from the very beginning, even before diagnosis, as I was kind of navigating everything, he was making light of it, and he was making jokes, and he has stuck around. So we've been together since 2014. So he was with my diagnosis, he's been with me through all of my attacks. He kind of became that stabilizing factor for me, because, you know, sometimes I'm overdoing it or I don't want to slow down, and very much that patience for me and saying, hey, you've got to slow down a little bit, you know, maybe we should do this. But I think we've also had to have some really difficult conversations after my diagnosis, you know, having conversations about like, do we want to have kids that look like being on Rituxan or being on NMO or having NMO. I have a 9-year-old son, and at the time my diagnosis was kind of set from that loss of vision in 2014, but we've more recently figured out, I was telling my neurologist I had hyperemesis during my pregnancy, I had narcoleptic episodes after my pregnancy, and she's like, those might have been NMO. And so now there's kind of this thought about, you know, do we want to forward with having children, and, you know, what does our future look like, and what is that, you know, how does it impact that? And so thankfully I didn't have to go through the traditional dating with NMO, but now kind of being in that relationship and having those conversations about what does the future really look like for us, that's probably been the biggest impact for us with NMO, is just kind of that, do we have kids, or even just buying a house.
Yeah.
You know, we were looking for a house 2 years ago, and he was very adamant that I needed to have a 1-story house, because in February of 2018, I had started kind of losing functionality in my right leg. And I bought a house in October of 18, and he's like, what if you can't get up those stairs? Because I was stubborn. I bought a house with stairs. But those types of things that you have to think about, he's my sanity. He's the one asking the questions while I'm over here like, I am perfectly normal and healthy and I can do what I want to do.
It's your advocate. Like, you know, no one wants to admit that they might need like extra accommodation, or like, you know, that things might need to look different. But if you have like someone in your corner watching you, they can do that for you. That's a great partner.
Yes, he's been amazing.
All of these stories are the positive stories, and I feel like the key overlaps that I hear is like very strong, intense communication, being honest, being direct, talking about needs and shared experiences and mutual understanding. But if you look at the statistics of relationships, marriages, like the divorce rate, you know, I'm basically extrapolating from MS, just because, right, there's more data there. Like the divorce rates are much higher in marriages in people with MS compared to the general population, which of course is already quite high. And I know that can be actually even higher when it's the woman who is living with MS versus, you know, if it's a man living with MS and like the partner is a male, right? And, you know, we can go into a lot of speculation on the dynamics of that. But, right, we're all, you know, seemingly, you know, women with male partners, and these are great success stories, but it seems like it's because you guys are doing all of this very upfront work, which of course is required in any relationship, but NMO just like amplifies. Like you don't have a choice but to immediately have these like very difficult but very impactful conversations.
Well, and was a blessing in meeting him before my diagnosis and being able to have, or at least when I was having symptoms, because he got the decision up front. Sometimes I think about, what if I had been in my prior relationship and had been diagnosed? I don't think that relationship would have survived. Like, I think that he really got to make the choice to stick around. And he also kind of got to experience things with it not being a marriage and having to, I think you get into a marriage and you kind of have a routine, you have expectations about how that marriage is going to go. And then a diagnosis thrown in the middle of that can change that dynamic of what you thought that relationship was.
Yeah.
Whereas when you've got a relationship, you're setting those expectations from the beginning. And so I think that was kind of our blessing, was we got to have those conversations up front rather than being 6 years or more into a relationship and then all of a sudden having this, this diagnosis come up and change that dynamic that we'd established and worked toward.
Yeah. Wow, Kristen, that's, I think, incredibly insightful. Julie, you are a married woman with NMO, and we briefly talked about this before, that you have like this very wonderful, supportive husband. Yeah, how did you guys do that?
Well, I think it's been about 5 years ago when I was diagnosed, and he has been there since every step of the way. My original diagnosis was MS, which happens to a lot of NMO patients. And coincidentally, my husband is a pharmaceutical sales rep who has been selling multiple sclerosis drugs for about 20 years now.
Wow.
So the whole time he was like, I don't think it's MS, Julie. I just don't think it is. And so he researched, he did all of these incredible things. I was just ready to just accept it, move on, be done with it. I too was stubborn. Okay, so it's MS. I'm going to beat this. Who cares? We don't need to do more, and then because mine started with loss of vision also, but he insisted that they check for bands, even though that's not 100%, positive, but there were no bands. He just did all.
And so all of that, he knew, most MS patients have illegal clonal bands, like that autoantibody clump, right, basically. And he's like, if overwhelmingly most patients have this, and she's having these weird visual, wow, like amazing.
And just like Kristen, I had weird things during my pregnancy. I've had all kinds of autoimmune issues throughout my life. And if you look back on it, it all seems like, oh, well, that was probably NMO at this point. So he is just incredible. And we have been able to have every conversation that we've needed to have about this. And he's actually pushed me to do more and try more. And just recently, it's odd that we're having this conversation now, because our electricity has been out a lot with the snowstorm recently where I live. So we've kind of been forced into a bedroom, and we've been able to just talk. And we've talked about the future. We've talked about everything. I've cried, and he's like, it's fine. It's going to be fine, because we don't know what the future holds. No one knows, right? I mean, even a health person has no idea what the future holds. So he's able to kind of turn my perspective and make me understand it's going to be okay. He's there every step of the way. He's an amazing support system, and the knowledge that he has from his background has been incredibly helpful.
That's an incredibly wonderful story, and I would love to meet him, because he sounds like he's a great partner. With COVID, which obviously lots of difficulties, but one of the silver linings, I think, and my husband and I joke, is that we know that we love each other now, right? Like, we've been stuck alone pretty much for a year, having these intense conversations on top of intense conversations about who we are and what we want, because we have nothing else to do. And I feel like we've been married for like a year, but I feel like we've been actually, with the pandemic conversion rate, we've been married for like 12 years, and we're going strong. Thank you for sharing all of that, Julie, though. Like, that you guys are defying the odds, and to me, it seems like, and I think that there's data to support this, that you guys are having these open, raw, honest conversations. You're solid communication, and he just definitely, obviously, understands the situation probably better than most people ever would.
If we couldn't communicate openly, it would never work. Again, like Kristen said, if you can't, the fact that they can have those conversations up front is amazing. I mean, because if you can't communicate it, you will not make it through this. That's else to say, especially with COVID on top of the disease.
Yeah, and I think like I'm also hearing is in a lot of ways you have to find a partner who will help advocate for you when you're too when you're too tired, or like you're going through a relapse, or you're the one, like you're the patient, like you're trying to just like be healthy and overcome this. Like you do need a partner to rally for you. But of course, that doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic partner. That could be a family member, a really good friend, like neighbor, whatever. But you definitely have to have one. And if you're gonna have a partner in life that the law, calls your spouse, then they really better be an advocate for you.
Absolutely.
Kind of now shifting. How do you manage relationships where you're not very close with them? And we were talking about having advocates for you, but what happens when you have to become your own advocate and managing relationships with coworkers, classmates, professors, things like that?
I think for me, so during my flare that wound up getting me diagnosed, I was actually in my the biggest project of my career at the time. And we were on a go live weekend. And so I worked from the infusion center. I'm hooked up to steroids on my computer, kind of facilitating this go live. And then Monday morning, I still had the IV port in my arm, was leaving work early to go get steroids.
Wow.
So I'm running around supporting everybody it was a software rollout. So kind of running around the office with an IV literally hanging out of my arm that Monday. And so kind of went first into being open with my employer about being sick and about having, something going on. And so I've been really lucky in that case, because I think that they're extremely understanding. My boss at the time was always, if I needed time off or, I've come in, I tend to have steroid withdrawals. And so there have been times where maybe I had steroids over the weekend and I come in on Monday and I'm swelling up like a gigantic balloon. I'm sweating, I'm throat, and so, they're go home, they're very supportive. But I think the other side of it is that I also don't want to have people think I'm not capable of doing my job because of it. So there's this balance of being open and communicating with my coworkers, the ones that sit around me. I'm like, hey guys, if I stand up and I collapse on the floor, this is who you call, versus sitting in a meeting and using it as an excuse and saying, well, I didn't do this because I'm sick.
Right.
And just kind of learning that balance of being open and sharing that so that my people at work understand what's going on, but then also proving I'm capable of, and I can do my job and be successful with it.
And right, wow, what a tough balance to strike, by the way, right? That you're trying to overcome basically a stereotype that people with a chronic illness might not be able to do their job or use it as an excuse for underperforming, when really you're just asking for, understanding and compassion. But that is a balance that has to be met. How often do you find at all any issues with ableism?
So thankfully I'm kind of like Alexis, where visually, unless I've told you that I'm sick, or maybe you were one of those people that saw me running around like the crazy person with my IV in the arm, you really don't. I do have some vision issues related to light sensitivity and stuff like that. So I have to have my desk set up just the right way with the lighting and stuff like that. But so far, I think because people can't visually see it, I don't experience a lot of ableism or anything like that. Every now and then we'll have something maybe if we're doing a move or something, I tend to notice people are a little bit more can I help you? Can I lift those boxes for you? Can I, and I'm the stubborn, I'm capable of doing it myself. I can, I can move it, and regret that because sometimes maybe I could. But I think that's really, and I don't necessarily interpret that as ableism. I think I see it more as them supporting me. I really and truly, sometimes I hear the stories of others with NMO and, what their experiences have been like. And I recognize that I've been very blessed in that regard with having an employer that is so supportive, and, you know, people that I work with, coworkers that have become friends through this process, and, you know, I know that they're there for me. So I know that I probably had a different journey than some with their employer, just because I have been so blessed with how things turned out.
And I'm so glad that you have been so blessed. And I, you know, I would think like more and more like that will be the standard or the norm of like social behavior, but thank goodness for it.
Yeah, I think Kristen said something that really resonated with me, where, you know, you want people to know about and your like disability. You want people to know that, but you also don't want them to think that you're not capable.
Mm-hmm.
I find that as a woman, I'm always struggling with like my imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Like, did I really do this like well? And then when you add like having NMO and having a disability on top of that, at least in school, when I like, you know, have to get my accommodations form signed, and then I start doing really well on like exams and papers, I'm like, did I really do that well? Or like, do they just kind of feel bad for me and are like, you know, grading like extra nice? So I totally resonate with that.
And Lexi, did you feel like, you know, throughout school, you've had like mostly good experiences with accommodations, or has there ever been a moment that, you know, was maybe a little bit more tenuous or a fight?
Yeah, so it was freshman through junior year, smooth sailing, got my accommodations form signed, everything was, you know, hunky-dory. And then first semester of my senior year, I decided to take a nutrition class. So exciting news, I actually haven't told my family this yet, but by the time this airs, they'll know. But I was accepted to Johns Hopkins for my graduate studies. I'll be studying nutrition, and I want to ultimately do research on how nutrition impacts like NMO flares and attacks.
Lexi, congratulations and good for you. That is incredible. You're amazing. Wahoo. I'm applauding you.
Thank you. So, you know, when I signed up for this class, like, obviously it was, like, very important to me. Like, it's not just, like, a throwaway class. Like, it's what I'm basing my future off of. So I had sent my accommodations form, I think, like, the second week of classes to my professor. And I received an email back saying, if you had read my syllabus, you would know that I only accept accommodations forms the first week. Otherwise, you are not getting accommodated. Please call my office hours. And that just really took me aback. I was like, whoa. I'm like, first of all, like, you need to have grace for people who are just like adjusting to the semester. Secondly, like, what the heck? Like, what if I was diagnosed midway through the semester? Would you just like not accommodate?
Yeah, that's a very heated email to get.
Yeah. So I went to this office hours with her, and I like explained, like, you know, I might be fine right now, but like 3 months from now, especially during a pandemic, like, I don't know if I'm going to get COVID. I don't know if I'm going to react to that. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I need the ability to like, for an extension, like if possible, not even if possible, just like, you know, I need to prioritize. I need the ability to prioritize my health.
Right.
And her response was, well, you can just do it from your bed. Yeah, I'm seeing this.
Wow.
So that was not great. I had the Accessibility Resource Center got involved. It didn't really help. We ended up having this went on for months. It just always circled back to, well, the class is asynchronous, so you should have enough time to like complete the stuff even if you are sick. And I was like, that's not really how this works. And then the idea was, oh, well, if you can't finish the coursework now, you can just pick up where you left off next semester. I said, okay, and if I get sick next semester, are you going to make me not go to grad school and make me spend an extra semester during my undergrad just because you won't accommodate me?
Yeah, this is becoming also more like a principle of the matter kind of thing.
Exactly. It became like you said, like a fight of principles, and it also just became like, it felt like it was a power play. Mm-hmm. Like she wanted to assert her dominance and say like, no, like I'm right. So eventually it didn't get anywhere. I never got my accommodations signed. Like that really stunk. But during that class, I was also taking a policy course, a public health policy course. And our final project was to find a policy and work on it, like come up with solutions to make it better. Mm-hmm. So I picked the ADA, and I analyzed like, okay, you know, the wording in the ADA for accommodations is so vague. It doesn't really provide any expectations for college students. It's more so focused on workplace. And that's a huge gap because, you know, there's specific policy for K through 12 and then there's specific policy for workplace, but that in between of like 18 to 21, like there's nothing. And so people like my professor can read into that and, you know, make it how they want it to be so that they don't have to, you know, help people. Really, that's what it comes down to.
They don't have to accommodate.
Yeah. And so I wrote this paper, and one of my solutions was having ADA training for professors and students at the school. And I was at the end of my paper, I was like, you know what, like this is like it wouldn't cost the school anything, and like, you know, it was correlated to like increased mental health, like increased relationships, better grades, better standings for the school. Like I really went in depth with this, and I presented it actually to the president of the school. I'm lucky that she's like super open to hearing, and I've talked with her about like disability advocacy before, and she's like, this is a great idea. I want you to work with the accommodations office, like the disability office, and I want you to implement this.
Go girl.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So this semester, which is cool, it's like my senior year, it kind of feels like my legacy, my last semester, and I'm working on this training that's going to be implemented in the fall. So all incoming students, faculty, and staff are going to, you know, have to actually sit down and think about what it means to, you know, be able-bodied versus being disabled. And I'm really excited about it.
Look at you implementing evidence-based policies. Woohoo!
Yeah, so I'm excited because, you know, it was a really, really crappy situation. And I think that you can either let that get to you and you can just kind of like wallow in that. But I think that, you know, having NMO really teaches you have to be strong and you have to fight for yourself, whether it be for your health or just like in general. Like we're all fighters.
Yes. And I think what you're doing is obviously amazing. You're being an advocate not only for yourself but for others. You're advocating from your experience so that other people don't have to go through it, and probably worse, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, you guys are all so impressive. Like, I'm sitting here reflecting that, like, we have all of you go, like, battling NMO every day, and what that looks like is you all highlighted so many degrees of uncertainty and how it creates added layers of complexities for, like, your whole life, including your relationships, and yet that you're successful with what you do, like, with your marriage, with your motherhood, with your careers, with your schoolwork, just wow. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and also, in addition to everything that you do, being advocates for the NMO community.